Good evening. It was a very tense situation for police, firefighters, and people living near a house that caught fire in the town of Tonawanda.
They were all on alert for a man inside the burning house who may have had a gun. Take a look. This is where it happened. Police and firefighters were all around a house on Fries Road since this morning. We have team coverage tonight from the neighborhood, beginning with News 4's Diana Fairbanks. Diana?
Don and Jackie, you know, we've been covering this developing story for about 8 hours now. It started with a house fire in the town of Tonawanda, a huge house fire. If there was anything left of the house, it'd be about 2 houses down across the street here. We're at Eggert and Fries Road. This busy intersection was closed down till about 12:30. A house fire that size in a neighborhood filled with cozy family homes would have been news enough, but there is a lot more to this. When fire crews arrived, they initially stayed back from the home because there were reports that someone inside had a gun. When police arrived, officers said they heard gunshots. Investigators say a woman called them saying a man inside had threatened to kill her. Police identified that man as 60-year-old Joseph Hollywood. I gotta tell you, when I first heard that name, I asked if it was his real name. And legally, yes, Joseph Hollywood is his legal name. Turns out about 10 years ago, he changed it from Joe Bernarski. He legally changed it to Joseph Hollywood. So the question now is, where is Joe Hollywood? Just moments ago, News 4's Lou Raguse confirmed that the body of Joe Hollywood has been found inside of this home in the town of Tonawanda. All day, though, there have been so many questions about where Joe Hollywood is. Let's bring in George Rickert, who has been on the scene. George, I know you've been following this closely.
Yeah, it is. And as you said, we now know that his body was found in the house. But even 1 hour ago, 7 hours after this fire started, they were searching the home around the block. Take a look at the video. Now, this was the scene in 100 block of Mayfield. At about 3:30 this afternoon, the SWAT team entered a different home around the block from Joe Hollywood's home. Police aren't saying what information they had that caused them to search that home, but you could see them clearly moving in there. They had a search dog as well. Again, this was 6 hours after the fire had started. They're not saying what led to believe that he could still be alive in a house around the block, but they wanted to play it safe. You can never be too sure. So that was the scene on Mayfield. That scene is now over. They gave the all clear. They didn't find anything. And as we now know, Joe Hollywood dead in his house, as that's what they expected.
Well, you know, this day started so many hours ago. Lou Raguse, one of the first reporters on the scene this morning. Lou, I know you have been keeping a close eye on the story as it's been developing all day. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Diana, earlier today, police thought that it could take days to find Joseph Hollywood's body if he was, in fact, in his burned-down home. Again, they found it just recently this afternoon, as we confirmed, and they're hoping that it's the last twist in what has been just a dramatic day. It started with a phone call from a distraught girlfriend.
She was stating that he's going to kill me, he's got a gun.
When officers arrived to the home of 60-year-old Joseph Hollywood at 163 Fries Road, it was burning. They heard gunshots inside, and they were not able to make contact with him. The situation was too dangerous for firefighters to get close to the burning house, and they believe the suspect is dangerous himself. In just the last 10 years, Hollywood had 18 run-ins with Tonawanda police. 18 contacts.
Yeah, a variety of different things, from disturbances to domestic trouble to reckless driving to you name it. It's all over the map, really.
He's a man some neighbors describe as eccentric. Some say he's nice. Before long, the fire was so intense that officers assumed if Hollywood was still inside, he couldn't have survived.
With a fire that involved, I don't think anyone could survive just due to the smoke and the things related to the fire, let alone the potential for those shots that people heard to be shots that he aimed at himself.
But that said, the SWAT team couldn't take any chances. They fired a flashbang before searching 2 vans parked on Hollywood's property. They didn't find him there. It was a tense few minutes as SWAT surrounded the burning house before they determined he wasn't hiding out there to ambush them. Police on the scene of the burning house believe Hollywood most likely killed himself.
From the initial call, it sounded as if he was just determined to die today, one way or another. Gave her that indication and gave her an opportunity to leave the home, is what it sounded like.
Is it a relief that, as of right now, it appears no innocent people were hurt?
Absolutely. Best case scenario that he dies in that fire, and that's the only person that dies.
And you can tell by listening to that interview with Tonawanda Police Lieutenant Nick Beto, that was several hours ago, actually, and at the time, he assumed that Hollywood was dead inside his house. It turned out he was correct. And Diana, just a relief for the Tonawanda Police
yeah.
Department that the search ends here.
Absolutely. And you know, Lou, all this afternoon we've been out here at the scene. We've seen so many families, school buses, post office workers. This neighborhood really is just teeming with people. In fact, it's very close to several schools. Those schools were put on lockdown earlier today, including Kenmore East High School. It's on the same street as the fire on Fries. Police advised Kenton school officials to take a lot of precautions. Shortly after the fire, Kenmore East locked down, stopping anyone from entering or leaving the high school. After that, all schools in the Kenton district were on lockdown. That lockdown lasted a couple of hours. It was lifted early in the afternoon. But remember what George Rickert told us about that other house. That's when school officials decided to lock down again several schools closest to the home. Just for a short time, they ended up lifting that delayed dismissal then at about 4 o'clock. That included Kenmore East, Edison, and Franklin Middle Schools. Now, if you live in this neighborhood, if you live anywhere in this community, that has to make you a little bit on edge. Let's bring in News 4's Ed Dranch. Ed, you've been talking to neighbors all day. If I lived in this neighborhood, I would be incredibly tense and worried. How are the people responding?
It was certainly a scary situation for many of the neighbors here. Many of those neighbors were told to stay inside, away from doors and windows. Many were told to go to their basements. But that didn't stop people from coming out here to Fries Road and Egger, essentially gawking. This whole area was full of about 24 people trying to see what was going on, watching this all unfold. Flames roared and smoke billowed as police officers were staked out with guns drawn. Focused on this burning Fries Road home, Joe Hollywood was believed to be inside and had fired a gun.
I heard a boom, boom, and then a boom.
Terry Coburn heard 3 shots just after 9 a.m.
Then about 5 minutes later, I heard a bunch of sirens, and next thing you know, I come down the street, and all these firemen and policemen are all over creation here.
Tammy McAndrews said neighbors were told to stay inside and move to basements.
Well, I figured there was some lunatic loose in the neighborhood, so we ran upstairs and looked outside and saw flames over there, and oh, they were huge, higher than the trees.
Firefighters told me they weren't allowed near the burning home because of a potential threat. And even though police are still carrying their AR-15s, I'm told there is no threat, and firefighters are here now extinguishing whatever flames are left.
So we're just at that point now where you can see there's not much left.
Jerry Wagner said he called for help after hearing shots and seeing flames from his front porch.
It's a shame, again, something like this to happen.
In the end, half the house was burnt to the ground. A pile of 2x4s looked like used matchsticks.
I mean, it's really surreal because that doesn't happen around here.
Now the question becomes, why did this happen in a place so quiet and so far removed from crime? What goes through your mind?
Never thought something like this would happen in the town. Living in the town of Tonawanda, but I guess it, proves that no matter where you live, something, can happen anywhere.
Certainly the case. You can see, though, the investigation continues, although Joe Hollywood was found dead in his home. Obviously, though, a much different feel right now than what we saw earlier today. You can see a lot of the police are gone, essentially, and the intersection has been reopened. But again, the investigation is still ongoing tonight.
So many questions remain. Thank you, Ed, so much for your coverage today. Let's go back and recover some of the information we have brought you in our newscast today. Remember, just moments before the newscast began, we have confirmed that Joe Hollywood was found dead inside of his town of Tonawanda home on Fries Road. That is the most important thing to keep in mind right now. Investigators have a lot of questions, but let's get through the timeline. That house on Fries Road caught on fire about 9:20 this morning. Police report hearing gunshots, up to 3 gunshots. Shortly after that, neighbors were asked to stay inside of their homes, lock their doors. Schools were put on lockdown. The lockdown of schools has been lifted. And again, police are sifting through the home. They have confirmed they have found the body of Joe Hollywood in his Fries Road home. That home is just now a pile of ashes. Investigators are continuing to sift through those ashes. So many questions remain tonight. We have team coverage on the scene. We're going to try to get to the root of those answers for you, bring them to you here on News 4. But for now, we're going to send things back to you in the studio. Don and Jackie?